Dobre bratstvo, lucha bogatstvo. The Russian proverb says good fellowship is the best wealth. When we're talking about the Russian Far East, richness, bogatstvo, is a good place to start. The land is rich with gold, diamonds, endless forests, stunning wildlife like Siberian tigers and Amur leopards, and a coast teeming with marine life, not to mention oil and gas. From the land of real people in Chukotka in the far north, to Khabarovsk on the Russia-China border, to Sakhalin and the Sea of Okhotsk, to Yakutia, home of diamonds and horses. It's a bountiful and beautiful landscape covering over 2.5 million square miles. As for people, if not rich in numbers, the Far East is rich in cultures. The Nenets, Chukchi, and Sakha people have centuries-old cultures that still endure, along with traditional arts like the mouth harp or khomus, played by the Sakha people, horse breeding and fermented milk drinking in Yakutia, and reindeer herding in Chukotka. You can see the rich indigenous experience in the wonderful movie Dersu Uzala, the true story of a friendship of an indigenous man, Dersu, and the Russian Soviet explorer Arsenyev, an historical giant himself. Arsenyev survives through Dersu's deep connection to nature, especially tigers. Unforgettable. The history is also rich. Civilizations and empires have risen and fallen in the Far East. We can imagine emissaries crisscrossing the region and visiting kings and queens of the Bohai civilization and the Qing dynasty. There are touchstones to those ancient civilizations, with the ruins of a Bohai castle found in Primorsky Krai, for example. Tracing volcanic glass in the Far East, scientists have seen evidence of vast trading networks covering thousands of miles, the glass apparently used as currency. So there are physical artifacts you can see and touch of ancient civilizations. For Americans, reminders of our history are there, but sometimes artifacts are hard to find. Americans can be particularly proud that African-American Richard T. Greener was the first American State Department official sent to Vladivostok. Greener was also the first African-American to graduate from Harvard in 1870. He himself petitioned the State Department to open the mission, given what he saw as the Far East's economic and strategic importance. Although, when he got to post, he joked about his Siberian exile. He served as commercial agent from 1898 to 1905, when the Russo-Japanese War broke out. Another thing we can see are photos of American soldiers on the streets of Vladivostok, sent during the Russian Civil War. The American Expeditionary Force totaled 7,950 officers and enlisted men. The first American troops disembarked in August 1918. They guarded the railway and helped the Czechoslovak Legion evacuate Russia. Their mission, as General Graves understood it, did not include fighting the Bolsheviks. Repeatedly calling for restraint, Graves often clashed with commanders of British, French, and Japanese forces who wanted him to take a more active part in the military intervention. The experience for the soldiers was miserable. Problems with fuel, ammunition, supplies, and food were widespread. Horses, accustomed to temperate climates, were unable to function in sub-zero Russia. Water-cooled machine guns froze. The last American soldiers left on April 1, 1920. During their 19 months, 189 soldiers died from all causes. General Winter, or General Frost, however you want to translate Zima in the Russian cold, took his cold again, just as was the case with Napoleon and the Germans in World War II. Another thing you can see and touch is a statue of world-famous actor Yul Brynner that graces a square in Vladivostok. The Brynner family hails from Vladivostok and had numerous business ventures before they fled the civil unrest and eventually made their way to the United States. Yul's son Rock is a regular visitor to the Pacific Meridian International Film Festival, and his book chronicles the Brynner family adventures. Other early Americans include Eleanor Prey, who chronicled her life in Vladivostok from 1894 to 1930 with Letters Home. Her book is published in English and Russian. It's an important historical look at the region. Her statue and home are still there. Moving ahead in time, you can still see an American train at the Vladivostok station, the end or beginning of the Trans-Siberian Railway, shipped there as part of the Lend-Lease program in World War II. the U.S. sent munitions, food, and supplies to the Soviets, taking the brunt of the Nazi onslaught. 27 U.S. cargo ships were transferred to the Soviet Far Eastern State Shipping Company, FESCO, a well-known Vladivostok-based company. 50% of Lend-Lease goods came through the Pacific route, $11 billion worth of vital equipment. One of the most historically significant interactions took place on November 23rd and 24th, 1974. President Gerald Ford came to Vladivostok, at his request, by the way, because he saw a documentary about tigers in the Far East, and he and Soviet Premier Brezhnev reached an arms control agreement that would limit both countries to an equal aggregate number of various weapons, including strategic nuclear delivery vehicles and submarine-based missiles and intercontinental ballistic missiles. The summit was a success and a high point in the era of détente. The two leaders reportedly got along well, but I don't think President Ford got to see his tiger. You can stay in the Okeansky Sanatorium where they negotiated and even visit the restaurant where they relaxed and talked sports in the evening. Indigenous Chukotkins and Alaskans visited each other during the coldest days of the Cold War with a visa-free agreement that allowed Chukchi and Alaskan natives to cross the Bering Strait and visit relatives. That ended, but there were numerous individual crossings and cultural revivals, and finally, Air Alaska flights that brought even more people together. That has also been an on-again, off-again story, and the potential for tourism remains largely untapped. Some of the history is astounding. 800 children were evacuated from war-torn Russia in 1921, transported across Russia to Vladivostok, then on to San Francisco, to New York, and finally back home to Petrograd, thanks to American Red Cross volunteers. This story could be a Hollywood movie and is a chapter in a forthcoming book by Tony Allison called America Bay, Russia and its Wild East. The point is that American intentions in this part of the world can sometimes be quite humanitarian and good. I participated in a goodwill flight, in fact, from the governor of Alaska to the people of Magadan in the late 1990s. It was a particularly cold winter in Magadan, which is really saying something, and the people of Alaska sent an airlift of food and supplies to at least warm the hearts of their neighbors, if not actually help in a trying time. I suspect the people of Magadan know something about getting by through hard winters. For the consulate, our little slice of history, so far, starts in 1992 when Consul General Randy Lecoq made his way to this far post and set up shop in the formerly closed city, helping American citizens who made their way there and offering consular services to Russians with questions about visas, immigration, and America in general. Another early Consul General, Jane Floyd, recalled her time in a 2004 interview with the Association for Diplomatic Studies and Training. The consulate was pretty much the end of the earth, she said, but we managed to bring in people who enjoy that, and we had, I think, a really good group of folks. It meant that we reached out for a lot of support from distant or perhaps non-traditional partners. We were very close with our NGOs. Many of them were operating on USAID contracts, but we brought them into the country team. We had excellent relations with the U.S. Pacific Fleet. The fleet was a huge supporter. It created delightful bureaucratic disconnects within the U.S. government because, of course, the consulate reported to the embassy in Moscow, which was part of the European Bureau, yet our primary partner was out of the Pacific, so we got to straddle both worlds. Ship visits have been a staple of the consulate's work, with sailors strolling the streets of Vladivostok, taking part in community projects, playing volleyball and soccer, and even taking part in chef competitions in Vladivostok. For me, during my time as Consul General, I saw a lot of promising things. We hosted an American astronaut, Alvin Drew, who joined cosmonaut Alexander Balandin in a movie screening. I can tell you, astronauts and cosmonauts are even more popular than rock stars. Full disclosure, my wife danced with Alexander, and I'm still jealous. Not that American rocker Alice Cooper wasn't a hit when he came to the consulate. He was a great cultural ambassador. What do these disparate points in history add up to? Well, potential and peril. The fact that we can be powerful allies and determined adversaries has played out in Vladivostok. Lend-Lease showed the power of our alliance, and President Ford and Premier Brezhnev's summit showed our ability to compromise in the midst of Cold War competition. I would say the future is up to us. As the babushka says, babushka gadala, da, na dvoje skazala, to li dojdik, to li sneg, to li bude, to li niet. We'll see what we'll see. Maybe rain, maybe snow, maybe yes, maybe no. It could go either way. But unlike the weather, the future is up to us. For now, the U.S. consulate's operations are suspended, and throughout Russia, the Russian staff, who we relied on and were often the heart and soul of our missions, have been recalled by the Russian government. Both countries could do better. A consulate extends the reach of an ambassador, and when you're 7 time zones away, that's critical. The work is important, I know. I wouldn't have done it for 3 years otherwise. To everyone who has served in Vladivostok, in our far post, both Russians and Americans, thank you. Spasibo bolshoy. One more Russian proverb. Ni imej 100 rublей, a imej 100 друзей. Don't have 100 rubles, have 100 friends. This is a partnership, and I know over the years there have been some great Russian-American friendships. Those connections are part of the richness of this special part of the world. I congratulate Russian-American Pacific Partnership and the Council for U.S.-Russia Relations for playing such a vital role over the years in bringing people together, advocating for business and cultural exchange, and advancing both U.S. and Russian interests through its vast network of people in both countries. Non-governmental organizations like these help the two governments get through difficult times when the governments, often understandably and legitimately, have disagreements that affect the business world and even individual travelers. Real people can help get this relationship back on track. There's a lot of work to do. As Yuri Gagarin said, поехали. Let's go.